All right. What up, good people of YouTube? We back. This is as you can see in the aforementioned title. We back to Grady Judd. I figured I'd do this one too. We got to speed up because it didn't seem like it was fast enough before. I mean, even though it was 20 minutes, put at 1.5, that'd be enough. All right, so this one is some Wild Wild West shit. These motherfuckers, man. This is a lot of stuff. A lot of guns, marijuana. I mean, let him tell it.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with me today. This is a remarkably exciting day for us. I'm going to start by telling you that we did a protracted investigation over the last 2 years. It ended up with the oral intercept or a wiretap, as we know. It's important to understand that when you do a wiretap investigation, that immediately that investigation is going to leave your jurisdiction. It always does, because we're dealing with an international smuggling ring that operated out of Winter Haven, Florida. There was a lot of predicate cases that was put together before the wiretap was ever requested. And it takes an entire team of people across the United States. So first I want to introduce to you those that are standing up with me, and then we'll talk about the other agencies that were involved, and you can get a flavor for the complexity of the coordination of this investigation. First and foremost, none of this can happen without our state attorney, Brian Haas, who's with us today. Mr. Haas and his wonderful prosecutors, Nicole Orr and Jennifer Ordonez, are in charge of this investigation. They have worked hand in glove with us for over 2 years. Our state attorney is the real deal in Polk County vernacular. He puts bad guys in jail. He prosecutes people. He does what's right. And we're proud to have him prosecuting for us in the 10th Judicial Circuit. Osceola Sheriff Marcos Lopez, a good friend of mine and my colleague, we helped us immensely during this investigation, and he's standing up with us today. FDLE Special Agent in Charge Mark Brutno from our Tampa office is here with us today. All of them will speak, as well as our police chief from Winter Haven, who worked closely with us because this organization was focused on and operated out of Winter Haven, David Brannon. But without Homeland Security investigations, we have Group Supervisor Darcy Corton and U.S. Border Patrol Agent.
Oh yeah, once again, feel free, come chat. The links in the description. What up, old head dudes? What up? What up? We over here watching Polk County Sheriff lay down the law. You feel me? He got some big drugs behind him. We trying to figure out what's going on. Like I said, man, it's open panel. Feel free to hop up, man. Speak your mind while we doing this. If not, just sit back and chill, I guess.
In charge, Matthew Heckmanzik, we could not have been successful. We had to have contacts and we had to have work that occurred from the importation of methamphetamine by the pound, by the multiple pound from Mexico into Los Angeles and Fresno. And from LAX to Fresno, all of this drug flowed through, some through Memphis and some directly to us through the Orlando airport. So we also had the U.S. Postal Inspection Service, the Orlando Police Department, the Tampa International Airport Police Department, the St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office, the Fresno Police Department, and the Shelby County Sheriff's Office in Tennessee assist us. Now, all of these predicates in front of a press conference, usually people go, but I want you to understand, without them, this couldn't have come together. It was that massive an operation. So we began in September of 2020. We received information that the Jefferson family from Winter Haven was smuggling large amounts of drugs into Florida, from Mexico through California, and then to the streets of Central Florida. In February of 22, we ultimately initiated the wiretap. And why did we do this? We bought and made predicate cases for the wiretap throughout the 2 ensuing years, but we couldn't get to the top and link the organization together. This was a very different kind of operation. If you look at our org chart there, you notice that there's kind of 3 distinct.
You hear that? They say wiretap. Listen real closely how they talk about the wiretaps. And once again, appreciate y'all support my channel. The links in the chat, man. Yeah.
Groups of people. They were all interacting, but they had heads of each organization, and we'll go over and introduce you to some of them in a few minutes. But it wasn't the traditional organization. It was multifaceted. So we started the investigation, and here's what we determined. We determined that this large amount of drugs, by and large, was being smuggled to us from LAX in domestic flights. And I want to focus on domestic flights for just a few minutes. As a result of this investigation, we arrested 85 suspects. We added 355 new felony charges, 93 new misdemeanor charges to them. But listen, folks, I am sick and tired of this national media and these national groups telling us that drugs are low level and nonviolent. I think we'll demonstrate to you in just a few minutes that it's anything other than low level and nonviolent. That's right. The overwhelming majority of these people, not everyone, but the overwhelming majority of them had a previous 690 felony charges that had been filed against them, as well as 194 previous convictions and 712 misdemeanors. So we're not dealing with people that are low level, nonviolent people. Where did all of that silliness come from? And it's important to understand, and I want the people of this country to understand, they get to watch this on social media from my lips to their ears, that anybody that's trying to advance an agenda that drugs aren't dangerous, that drugs aren't deadly, they are lying to you. They are not telling you the truth. In this particular operation, we seized 268 pounds of methamphetamine, 6.8 ounces of fentanyl. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, just 6.8 ounces. But according to our DEA partners, 2 milligrams of fentanyl can be a deadly overdose. Okay, Grady, so what does all that mean? It means that 6.8 ounces of fentanyl could have killed up to 96,000 people. And we know in this investigation, and I'll repeat it again, that one of the Jefferson family, prior to the startup of this investigation, died.
And peep game about the numbers that he's talking about. He's talking about quantities. That's important because once you have a certain amount of a controlled substance that's deadly, they can like put you in the terrorist range. And once they start labeling you a terrorist, shit, you worried about going to prison.
Died from a drug overdose, but still their family poured this poison into our community, even though one of their loved ones died from some of the same drugs they were importing and selling on the streets. We seized a total of 49 firearms, all kinds of other assorted drugs and pills worth $12.8 million, and we seized $235,000 in cash. We know firsthand there were at least 2 drug overdoses during this investigation. And one of the drug overdoses, as I said, was one of the Kingpin's brothers that occurred just before we kicked the entire investigation off. It's important to understand why we were up on the wiretap, that we heard chatter within minutes of an unsolved homicide that's still being worked diligently by the Winter Haven Police Department at this time. So when you know that you have at least 2 overdose deaths, when you know that there is chatter on your wiretap as to a murder that just occurred in the city of Winter Haven, you're dealing with violent, dangerous people. So I want to point out, when we talk about low-level nonviolent crimes, this is what people were having pointed in their face. I'm going to introduce you to a guy who was kicking the door in and doing home invasion robberies and telling people he was the police. But look at the high-powered firearms that we seized. Now, you see this firearm and you go, yeah, that's a pretty ominous-looking firearm. Well, our folks, our detectives from the various agencies who are simply the very best in these long-term investigations had to face these guns, had to risk their life to get this gun away from hardened criminals and put them in jail. So at the end of the day, it's important to understand that people risk their lives in law enforcement in order for an investigation of this to come to a successful conclusion. But I want to highlight one event before I get to our folks. Listen to me, folks. There's nothing more important to us than the screening that occurs on our aircraft. When I hear people grumble and complain about having to go through scanners and TSA checking and their bags checked, and I hear that grumbling, I think, are you all out of your minds? They're keeping you safe. They're protecting your life. And I'm excited and thankful when I go through a TSA screening that those folks are there doing that for me. But here's what we know. Over and over and over on these domestic airlines from LAX.
What'd you say, old head? He said a lot of hype. Homeland Security was involved in. No, yeah, he's getting at that because he's saying, you know, you gonna see he gonna get
through suitcases, drugs was smuggled here. That's right. Look at this. On one occasion, on one airline, 6 suitcases with this drug was smuggled into Orlando. They didn't so much as throw a pair of underwear in the suitcase to act like they were hiding the drugs. You think LAX has got a drug smuggling problem at the airport? I believe that they do, and they need to address it ASAP. There were 6 of these suitcases on one flight. Think about that. Let me show you what this group looked like. All of this came in on one flight. One flight. So what happened at the other end of the line? There needs to be a deep dive into the baggage handlers and to see where the hookup was to allow suitcase after suitcase after suitcase to get through the scanning with no clothes inside, no evidence of clothes inside, just drugs. You think we've got a big operation going on here? I think we've uncovered a problem for LAX.
My man, like, look, they were so confident. Like he said, he's like, yo, they were so confident that everything was gonna go well. They didn't even put clothes. They just stuffed the whole thing full of drugs. Like it wasn't illegal. Like it's not even illegal. They just was like, all right. They packed it like they was packing drawers. Like,
94 pounds.
oh, what's up, Shelly?
You are the only person that called me Shelly. You stuck with that name since forever. The
You
only
you know you
person.
you know you live on YouTube right now, right?
I know, and I'm cooking my oxtails.
All right, go ahead, cook your oxtails, and I'm gonna talk about this police. Unless you got something you want to say about this police.
What happened? I mean, I'm on the show to listen or whatever, so I
All
wasn't
right.
gonna go
So
nowhere.
just listen to what he's saying, and if you got an opinion, let me know. I'm gonna mute you. Hold on.
Pounds of meth and 48 pounds of cannabis came in that day on that one aircraft. And here are the masterminds. Here are the ringleaders from left to right. Abdash McKenzie, DeMarcus Jefferson, Dwayne Stackhouse Sr., Leonard Henderson, Javaris Samuel, and DeMarte Munson. You'll hear more about them in a few minutes. But I want you to see the men who masterminded, who were the ringleaders, who put together this very complicated in this very complicated criminal enterprise ring that we investigated, and see how dangerous these men are. And DeMarcus Jefferson lost his brother to the same drugs, the same poison he was peddling in our community. So let's look at some of the individual players. Here's Abdash McKenzie. We'll go over real quick. He was selling fentanyl pills. He would tell us that in the undercover operations, I operate in mysterious ways so the cops can't catch me. Newsflash, it wasn't so mysterious. He got his first job in 9 years recently at KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken. Do you know why? He was proud of that $200 he made that week. Now he's a major drug smuggler. Why did he do that? Well, he was jammed up in a custody dispute, and he had to show the judge that he had a legitimate job. Otherwise, where did the money come from? But he is a businessman, because then he would pay his co-workers with dope to prep his workstation at work. But he's an ethical KFC guy, because my guys asked him, can we have...
Yo, he said this nigga used to pay people and dope to work for him. I mean, he said he only got the job because he needed some money on paper. Like, hey, gotta give him his props. He tried.
have the recipe for the Kentucky Fried Chicken? He wouldn't give it up if he had it. But this guy was scamming the system the whole way. Then there's DeMarcus Jefferson. He's another local kingpin of the operation. His brother is the one at only 25 years of age died of a drug overdose. Ladies and gentlemen, let me underscore once again. I can't understand how in the world DeMarcus could peddle poison to people when his family suffered such a loss as their 25-year-old kid brother. But there are people dying every day across this country because of drug overdoses and drug abuse. And yet we continue to try to downplay it as nonviolent, low-level drugs. You'll hear me say that a lot. The next person that tells you that, ask them if they're out of their mind or if they're on drugs, because it's dangerous. Now, along the way, just before the investigation, here's DeMarcus Jefferson's vehicle as he was intoxicated and drove through the front of a store. Some of the local news stations covered this. But what did he have with him when he drove into the front of the store while impaired? He had drugs, because he made phone calls, and we have videos from the store of people running up with masks on, going into the trunk and taking items out of the trunk before law enforcement arrived. DeMarcus is also involved in violent crashes. Then there's Antonio Jefferson, another one of the family members. In April 2021, we and the Florida Department of Law Enforcement charged him with armed trafficking in methamphetamine. While, let me say this clearly, I don't want you to miss it. While out on bond, he was trafficking more methamphetamine. Did you hear what I told you? Let me say that again, so you want to hear it clearly. I don't want to stutter. In April, we arrested him with FDLE on armed trafficking of meth. He bonded out and was trafficking in meth. And then we heard him on the Intercept saying, my attorney wants me to help. He wants me to cooperate. He wants me to give substantial assistance. He bragged, how can I do that? I'm the head of my organization. How can I help? Well, we're going to help Antonio Jefferson. We're going to help him to the state prison for a very long time. I hope his attorney got paid in advance. Then there's Nathaniel Carr. He was federally indicted for robbery from home invasion robberies, where he portrayed himself as a law enforcement officer, where he was kicking in doors throughout Central Florida. He's in custody. But we also have him for conspiracy to traffic in methamphetamine that occurred before he was arrested for his robbery arrest. He resided in Lakeland. He currently resides in federal lockup. Then there's Vicente Basanta. He's here from Venezuela with political asylum. Did you hear that? He is here with political asylum. Apparently, his ex-wife, who's not with him anymore and is not here, was a news reporter for the opposing party in Venezuela. So when the new party came in, she was scared, and guess what? He fled to the United States. Does he appreciate the United States? Oh, no, he doesn't appreciate the United States. He comes here to traffic in drugs. And what you have here is a Bible case. You see? People recognize these as Bible cases. But what did Vicente do? He carried his drugs in these Bible cases. Now, how much more low down can you get? So we give political asylum to a guy from Venezuela to come to this country to traffic in drugs and hide it in Bible cases. What the heck? I'm certain there must be some other words for him besides what I've said, but they probably wouldn't be appropriate. Oh, he was trafficking in cocaine. He's still here legally on asylum. I say we send him back. This is Clay Bryan. Now, this is interesting. To tell you how this international operation goes, Clay pulls up at the racetrack gas station in Eagle Lake, and he leaves the car running. Did you hear what I said? He left the car running while he ran into the store. Was he only going to be gone a short time? Voila. 3 juveniles from the area steal his car. And all of a sudden, they're wrapped up in an international drug smuggling operation when they steal the guard of the stash house's vehicle, which had a pound of meth in it. But being the enterprising young men that they were, not knowing they were in with some really bad dudes, they found the meth. But did they decide, let's abandon our stolen car and our meth? No. Then they talked about, hey, I'm going to sell this meth and make some real money. That's right. So these little dudes not only ripped off a major international drug smuggling operation, then they were going to sell the dope to make a profit. Well, they all got arrested. But it's funny how there's twists and turns, because they did us a favor by stealing that car that day. All of that led us back to Clay Bryan, and we seized an additional 24 pounds of meth. And it all started because they stole the car that Clay was operating. Thank you, you little criminals. Raspers. Then there's Dormonte Munson. He's known as D-Money. He's a local rapper. He was a mastermind. He was one that really put together the trips from the LAX to Florida. But here's the neat thing about Dormonte. He would go through the community. He would provide fireworks on the holidays. He would have Christmas gift giveaways. He would provide Easter egg hunts. You see, he was the good guy in the community, made the money, shared it with the kids. You know, he was grooming himself as a community charitable contributor for the underprivileged. The whole time he's doing it with smuggled and trafficked drug money. He had an associate, Samuel Javaris. Samuel Javaris got a legitimate Georgia driver's license with a false name on it, and he booked the flights. He utilized the false names. It worked. He had a robbery warrant and a VOP for battery on a law enforcement that was 10 years old. We couldn't find him. He had taken on a new identity successfully. And he had a friend with him, Aldrea McPherson. You see, he's big time. He had a home in Fresno and a home in Davenport, and he moved the drugs. And when we went to stop them so that we could serve the search warrant, Aldrea called children who she had access to and told them, hide the dope. Little kids, hide the dope. Are you kidding me? So what did they do with their money? They bought gold, lots of gold. This won't even fit over my head like the last one, so I just hold it up. $36,000 worth of gold. So they're providing things for kids in the neighborhood. They're buying gold. They're telling their family and friends about how successful they are. And the whole time they're peddling poison to your kids. I want to turn the podium over to Brian Haas, our state attorney, who is simply, as I've said before, the very best. There's not enough positive words to say because our state attorney's office is game on about how do we protect the people in the community? How do we keep people safe? And when we suggest these long, very difficult, complicated cases that some prosecutors across the state and nation want to run from because of their complexity, our state attorney and his team run to those cases in order to protect the community. Mr. Haas.
Thank you, Sheriff. I'm very thankful to have been able to be a part of this investigation from the very beginning and understand all the complexities and all the work that went into this. I think that these cases show how our communities are all tied, not just here within our county, but across our state and across our nation and across our world, which is why it's important that we all do our jobs to make sure that the criminals are being dealt with appropriately. Being easy on the criminals, wanting to be their friends, that's not the answer when you're dealing with folks like this. You've got to be aggressive and you've got to take control of the situation, which this is a step in that direction. I think one of the things that really left an impact on me was the amount of work that went into this case. And I know some of the folks that were involved are here today, prosecutors from my office, but across agencies, detectives, and folks that spent hours and hours and hours putting the time in, probably missing events with their family and things like that, making those.
All right, so the charges, that's the fun part. You know what I mean? Because he be roasting motherfuckers. But in reality, we I've never seen a police be on social media like this. Uh, because usually social media hate the police. But he actually has a personality. He feels like he's a real person. But I think the shit's hilarious. And I'm gonna review a lot more of these. Shelly's over there making oxtails. Which sounds good right now. But yeah. Appreciate y'all for supporting me. Fucking with the channel. You know what I mean? I'll be back with other topics. We'll see.